What is going on, everybody? Another episode of 4x4 Camping and Adventures, and in today's episode we're going to talk about the lift. So what happened? Got in touch with my good mate Reese from Southern Mechanical and Off-Road, and we sort of talked a few ideas about what's the best way to do these things. Now, there's two ways you can do this with these cars. Because they have a hydraulic system, you need to either go a hydraulic lift, which is decompress the whole system, put some new coils in the front, use the existing shock, which I'll get to, pros and cons of using the existing shock with the extended spring, and then obviously at the back it's just IRS, so essentially you just put new springs in there and lift it up, and there's a few bushes and that kind of thing you put in for a camper kit, and that is pretty much all you need to do in the back. If you have the airbags like I did on the standard height, you do need to get an adapter to space them out a little bit as well, so a couple of spaces. So what did we do? All right. We went with the on-track lower arm kit, which essentially replaces the lower control arm and pushes the spring up by 50 millimeters. Now this uses the standard spring and the standard shock with the new lower arm, and that's it. So you're not actually doing anything to the original suspension. You're just essentially lifting the original suspension up by 50 millimeters, and that gives you your lift at the front. In the rear, we went 400 kilos, yep. Big boy springs in the back because I've got all the weight in the back, I've got the drawers, I've got the fridge, I've got the water, all that kind of stuff on the back. So we had 400 kilo springs in the back, and they have been perfect. And I have the airbags in there still for towing and all that kind of stuff. So what kind of lift did it give me? Roughly about 70 mil. We've worked it out to be about 70 mil because my car was quite sagged with all the bar work, snorkel, roof rack, all that kind of stuff on the original suspension. It was quite sagged down. So we gained about 70 mil, but it is a 50 mil lift. So they say 40 to 50 mil generic, like generally with most, when you're doing these cars. Now, hydraulic lifts, they are a replacement of the coil in the actual shock, and then you repressurize the whole system, and then you have essentially a 100 kilo, 120 kilo shock in the front. Now that works really well if you've got a lot of weight in the front, and it does give you a true 50 mil lift. But you do also run in the risk, and I've talked to a few people about it, and there's pros and cons for each, but essentially you are lifting that original shock by 50 mil, and it wasn't really designed to be a 50 mil shock lift. You got to get when you do a lift kit, you generally get a longer shock to compensate for the more travel you've got, and essentially the higher lift and that 50 mil gain. So what you're actually doing is putting a fair bit of pressure on the original shock by lifting it by 50 mil. So as I said, pros and cons, tomato, but they both give you a 50 mil lift. The hydraulic way is, I suppose, a true replacement spring lift, and this is essentially just replacing that lower control arm with some upgraded lower control arms, and then obviously lifting it by 50 millimeters. Now, as I said, I went this way purely because there's only a few places in WA that can actually do a hydraulic lift, and I was getting some crazy quoted prices, ups around the $4,000 mark just to give this thing a lift, and I can't justify $4,000 on a suspension lift. Now this one here was about $2,000 for the lift, and Reese sorted me out with the labour. It's going to be dependent on each car, but I think it worked out to be about, I think it was about 800 bucks labour off the top of my head, but don't quote me, but it was roughly about 800 bucks. So you're looking at just under $3,000 for the same lift. So in my eyes, that's 1,200 bucks I can put towards better things, i.e. new awning, all that kind of stuff. But that's the big difference, is the price was just blowing me away, and I was just like, I can't justify this for a lift kit, which essentially, in my eyes, is some rear springs and a spacer kit, obviously, and a few camber, bushes and all that kind of stuff, and then a replacement spring on the front. It's obviously all the labour that gets involved with it, and the tool and that kind of thing they need to do it, but yeah, I just couldn't justify it. That was just something I couldn't justify. So I used the extra $1,000 to buy a new awning and lifted the car up anyways. But tell me what you think. I think it is absolutely fantastic. Oh man, I'm about to get hit by some rain. So let me jump back in the car and I'll finish this video off. So am I happy with it? Absolutely. So the big thing for me was comfort from factory. These things are ridiculously comfortable to drive, long distance, all that kind of thing, and I didn't want to ruin it. Generally, when you start lifting cars, they get a bit hay going with ride quality, and they get a bit jittery and that kind of thing. Now, I can't stress enough, if you have any car, before you do a suspension lift on it, put all your gear on it and then lift it up, because then you know exactly what weights and that kind of thing you're going to need to do. But the factory comfort, so all driving down long distance and all that kind of stuff, has been exactly the same as it was pretty much as factory. So it is a lift kit. There are going to be a few little areas where, you know, our corrugations is probably a little bit more harsh, but that probably comes down to more tyre pressure than anything, because you are a little bit higher, and I suppose the original car was set up for comfort, and it's got a little bit more weight in the back, you know, a little bit more weight and a little bit more spring pressure, so you feel a little bit more of that joltulations and that kind of thing over corrugations. But driving on the road, beautiful. Absolutely beautiful car to drive still, and it's probably a little bit nicer to drive because it hasn't got all that weight on the original suspension, which wouldn't have had much travel to work with. You've got to remember, you push those springs down, and all the time they're under probably 30% load. So when you're running obviously a bigger, let's say 400 kilo spring in the back, it's got a little bit more flexibility to play with. If you're driving around with 30% load on your springs all the time, that extra load is going to push them down to 100% a lot quicker. So you feel a little bit more. That's probably food for thought around the suspension piece. But as I said, it's very comfortable, beautiful car to drive, and I kept all the factory comfort, which is exactly what I wanted. So very good little setup now. 2-inch lift, plenty of clearance. I'm not dragging my ass on every single thing I go over. But yeah, I'm pretty happy with it. Even when I went down a couple of weekends ago with one of my mates, we went down just to Wellington Dam power lines track, and it went over everything. I couldn't believe some of the areas this would go, and I wouldn't have had that sort of confidence with the factory suspension. It's very capable now. So I might even fit some bigger tyres at some point as well. When these go out, there may be a 37-inch tyre under here, I reckon. That's in the future though. They've still got a fair few Ks left in them. But they're looking a little bit small, the guards now, don't you reckon? They're looking a little bit small. So I reckon these are designed to go with 37s, but it might be a little bit too big. So CVs, 37s, might be a bit how you going. Maybe I'll get a 37 as a play tyre. Maybe that's a better idea. Bit of a 37, like a Trep, as a play tyre that I can go out on the weekend with, bolt them on, go have a bit of fun, then put these back on for daily duties. Thoughts? Put it down in the comments. As always, guys, thanks so much for watching. This has been another episode of 4x4 Camping and Adventures. And if I don't see you in the next video, I might see you out here in the tracks and trails, or this lovely place called Waruna Dam, which is a little bit rainy, but that's all right. I'm getting my shots in between rain. But if I don't see you out here or on the next episode, I shall see you later. Have a great Sunday, guys, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.